The New Orleans Saints, a team that's normally been great since I started watching football back in the Super Bowl 44 years. The first year I ever watched football fully, the Saints went 13-3 and won the Super Bowl. So I've always known this team as one of the most dominant franchises since I've been alive, but as of recently, they're not much of a threat until now. I believe that the Saints have finally established something at the quarterback position for a little bit, and then with all the weapons that they have, the Saints look powerful and they look very promising. It's time to take a look and see if this is a fantasy hotspot for the city of New Orleans. Let's find out. What's going on, guys? My name is Aaron and this is the Game Day Hour. Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Team Review. In this series, we take a look at each and every 32 NFL franchises to see what they offer for fantasy football. We analyze a team's quarterback, running back, wide receiver 1 and 2, tight end, and starting kicker. Our goal is to analyze last season and see if these players are worth drafting, and if so, when and where. Today, we end off the NFC South with the New Orleans Saints. Derek Carr, New Orleans Saints quarterback. So for years, everybody knows the story. It's about Derek Carr. Is Carr overrated? Is he underrated? He's been playing for the Raiders his entire career until now, and for years everybody says he's been a great quarterback with a terrible defense. New Orleans has one of the best defenses, so this is the year we finally get to see if, in fact, those rumors about Derek Carr are true. But let's analyze his final season with the Raiders. He played 15 games last year, and in those 15 games, he had 305 completions, which was 14th, to 502 in attempts, which is 11th. He was 60.8%, that is 30th. He had 3,522 passing yards, that's 14th. With 24 touchdowns, that's 12th, and 14 interceptions, which is tied for 109th. That gave him 258 total fantasy points, which was 15th. He had a pretty good year, except for those interceptions, so he's going to need to clean that up. But with the receiving core that he has, I mean, he had a pretty good one with Vegas in his last year, but he has a really good and young core this year that could really help. He is kind of in the shoes that Aaron Rodgers is in. Slightly, not really, but you know what I mean. But he is impressive, and yes, he is somebody I would draft. Now, on my list, he is the 20th quarterback, which means that he is a quarterback 2 and close to being undrafted, but he is somebody I would draft, and I would see him being drafted in the late rounds, like 9 through 12. And that's mostly because, like, hey, he's starting to get up there in age, and he's kind of in a make or break situation. Even though it's his first year in New Orleans, that's kind of what it feels like. But if you have faith in this wide receiver core to help out Derek Carr, then he is going to be a pretty good backup. He's going to be a pretty good backup coming off the bench. Alvin Kamara, New Orleans Saints running back. Now, I was kind of surprised to see Alvin Kamara not being very high on the list of running backs. I was kind of surprised to see that not many people think his stats are going to be great this year, which is confusing to me because ever since he's been in the league, he's been one of the best running backs out there. As a dual threat running back, he's amazing. So let's see his stats from last season and see if people's concerns are justified. He played 15 games last year, and in those 15 games, he had 223 carries, which was 12th, to 897 rushing yards, which is 20th. He had 2 touchdowns, that's tied for 62nd, so yeah, he could have done better there, but he did not. He also had 57 receptions, which is tied for 60th, 490 receiving yards, that's tied for 97th, along with 2 touchdowns, that's tied for 111th. And he had 202 total fantasy points, that is 16th. So Kamara still played very well. I get they weren't like running back 1 type stats, but hey, the rushing game for New Orleans is pretty insane because even though I'm not going to be covering Jamal Williams, who's on the team right now, he led the league last year in rushing touchdowns, 17. Wow. Keep that in mind. But when it comes to Kamara, I still think he is a high draft pick. He is somebody I would draft. He is a running back 2 or 3, and I have him at rank 17th, which I see him being drafted in rounds 4 through 8. So yeah, with Kamara, I mean, hey, he you know what you're getting with him. He is a dual threat, great at rushing, great in the pass game. So yeah, like, don't get too skeptical on him. The only skepticism there is the fact that off the field he's having some like legal trouble, and that's the only thing you need to take like notice with. But other than that, he should be a pretty good draft pick. Chris Olave, New Orleans Saints wide receiver 1. There were 2 receivers that came in last year's draft. Garrett Wilson, who I have high praise for on the Jets, and Chris Olave, both coming from Ohio State. Ohio State produced some big time receivers because I really like Olave. I have a lot of faith that he is a big time player. So let's take a look at his stats from last season. He played 15 games last year. In those 15 games, he had 72 receptions, which was tied for 33rd. He had 1,042 receiving yards, that's 18th. With 4 touchdowns, that's tied for 46th. That was 196 total fantasy points, which was 24th. So he really produced. And he's going to have to produce a lot because though the Saints have a great receiver in Michael Thomas, he's constantly out with injuries, and it's odd, but yeah, Olave needs to step up to the plate as the number 1, which he is currently. And he is somebody I would draft. I have Olave ranked 13th on my list, and just behind Garrett Wilson. I think he's going to have a blow-up year, but he's like maybe a wide receiver 1, but mostly a high wide receiver 2 and just a wide receiver 2 in general. So yeah, I would take my picks with him. I see him being drafted in around 4 through 7, I'd say. I think he's a really great prospect that a lot of people are going to benefit from. Michael Thomas, New Orleans Saints wide receiver 2. And making his return to the football field, even though he's played 10 games in the last 3 years, is Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas, in my championship year, which was 2020, he was my first overall pick, and he was a 99 in Madden that year. But ever since then, he has trended all the way down. So it's a little concerning to say the least, but he's still a big time wide receiver. Even in the little games he played, he put up some pretty good statistics. He played 3 games last year. In those 3 games, he had 16 receptions, tied for 223rd, along with 171 receiving yards, that's tied for 213th. But in those 3 games, he had 3 touchdowns, which was tied for 72nd, which means in many games he can get in the end zone very often. That gave him 49 total fantasy points, which was 114th. So what it's going to be like if he plays every single game, he's still going to put up some really good numbers. And because of this, along with Chris Olave, this makes the Saints a potential top 10 receiving core in the NFL. And because of this, he is somebody who, though skeptical, he's somebody I would draft. Right now, he sits as a very low wide receiver 3 and a very high wide receiver 4. I have him ranked 32nd in between Schuster and Deontay Johnson. And I just think that I would need to see more, so he would be that late pick, which means he would be drafted in the rounds like 9 through 12. And yep. But I think that if he starts to get back in the rhythm, he can be a wide receiver 2, potentially even a 1 in the future. But you need to see that consistency back. So yeah, that's all I got from Michael Thomas. Juwan Johnson, New Orleans Saints tight end. So now the Saints have been rolling around with Juwan Johnson for a little bit, and he is shown to be a pretty reliable tight end. His stats last year are actually pretty impressive for a tight end. He played 16 games last year. In those 16 games, he had 42 receptions, which is tied for 93rd. He had 508 receiving yards, that's 83rd, but he had 7 touchdowns, which is tied for 15th. They gave him 130 total fantasy points, which is tied for 14th, and he's shown he can really get into the end zone very often. Now, that's really good in the regards for Carr getting in there, you know, get into the system. That's good to have a tight end that... Okay, I keep saying security blanket, and people are like, not every tight end can be a security blanket. Yes, they can. Because that's kind of what a tight end is there for. I mean, you can't tell me that Travis Kelce is not a security blanket for Patrick Mahomes. You're not convincing me otherwise. But just the way the tight end position works, they are normally the safer option, more or less to say. And Ron Johnson has shown that he is somebody who's getting there as a pretty good one. And because of that was a weak saying, but whatever, we're rolling with it. Now, he's outside my top 20, but he is somebody who I could potentially draft. He's 23rd on my list, and if he is somebody I would draft, he would most likely be drafted in the later rounds, like rounds 11 through 13. Other than that, I don't know if I would draft him. I'm not saying no, but I am not 100% saying yes. He is kind of undecided for me, but I think the more I will get to understand his game style, he might be more draftable as the year goes on. I don't know. But as we get closer to drafts a week, keep an eye on him. He might be getting some good reps going for early summer training camp, and yeah, be prepared. Will Lutz, New Orleans Saints kicker. Lastly, we have Will Lutz, and with many of the kickers that we see going up this way, we looked at 3 pretty good kickers. This one is kind of trending the opposite direction, and it's kind of unfortunate, and that's Will Lutz. Last season, he played 17 games. He was 23 for 31 and made attempted. That's 74.2%, which is 37th. He was 100% from extra point percentage. That's tied for first. His long was 60, and he had 102 points. That gave him 110 total fantasy points. That's 24th. So out of the top 20 in stats, he still played a pretty okay season, but still, you would hope that he does better in that regards. However, that's not enough to push him out of the top 20, so he is somebody I would draft as a kicker 2. He's ranked 20th on my list, and most kicker 2 kickers I'm picking in rounds 15 through 16, so there's that. He is probably out of everyone in the NFC South, the kicker I'm least excited to see at the moment, but hey, maybe he'll start trending upwards. And that'll do it for today's episode. And no, I did not wear this shirt multiple days in a row. I recorded all of these episodes on Monday, and I've been just releasing them throughout the week. But yeah, so there's only one episode with a different shirt. Who cares? But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and if you do, please leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe. Please subscribe. It would be... I very much appreciate it. Also, go follow me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They're all in the description below. Actually, I didn't mention this just yet, but I started putting tags on my Instagram posts, and I did the Jaguars, and somebody suggested to tag it to this certain place. And if you guys have anywhere that I should tag, like hashtag this or that, let me know, and I can go edit those posts and put the hashtags in and be all cool with it. So if you want to give suggestions, go ahead. But other than that, that's all I have. The next set of episodes are the AFC West, and we will be starting with the Denver Broncos. So I'll see you guys then. Hope you guys had a great day. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.